Imagine a single afternoon where 80,000 of the world's most disciplined soldiers are simply erased from existence. This isn't a fantasy, it's history. This is the story of the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, the day Hannibal Barca perfected the art of annihilation. He faced the might of Rome, a legionary force of 80,000 men with a smaller, more diverse army. And he didn't just win, he achieved a flawless tactical victory that military academies still study today. How did he do it? It wasn't luck. It was a masterclass in calculated asymmetry and psychological warfare. Get ready for a simulation-grade analysis of the perfect battle, the Double Envelopment. The Romans were the undisputed heavyweights of the ancient world. Their strategy was simple, brutal, and effective, a massive, overpowering infantry charge. At Cannae, they doubled down, packing their best legions into an incredibly deep column. The plan was to punch a hole straight through Hannibal's center and shatter his army. They saw their overwhelming numbers as their greatest advantage. But Hannibal's genius was seeing their strength as their greatest weakness. He knew exactly how they would attack, and he designed a battlefield to turn their power against them. His plan was a masterpiece of deception. Hannibal placed his weakest troops, his Gallic and Spanish infantry, right in the center. He deliberately made his line convex, bulging out towards the Romans. This wasn't a mistake. It was the bait for a meticulously designed trap. The Roman legions, roaring with confidence, crashed into this seemingly fragile center. As expected, the Gauls and Spaniards began to give way, slowly retreating under the immense pressure. For the Roman commanders, it was a textbook victory in the making. They were winning, breaking the enemy line, and they urged their men to push harder. This was the core of Hannibal's psychological trap, what we can call the bagging effect. The deeper the Romans pushed, the more they sealed their own doom, completely blind to the trap closing in around them. While the center was playing its part, the real action was happening on the flanks. On the wings of his army, Hannibal had stationed his elite African infantry, battle-hardened veterans who held their ground like a rock wall. They didn't move. They just waited. At the same time, Hannibal's superior cavalry, led by the brilliant Hasdrubal on the left and Maharbal on the right, engaged the Roman horsemen. The Punic cavalry was a mix of heavy Spanish and Gallic warriors and fast Numidian skirmishers. They were a nightmare for the less experienced Roman cavalry. The battle reached its critical turning point on the left flank. Hasdrubal's heavy cavalry smashed into the Roman cavalry, completely routing them. But here's where true tactical genius shines through. A lesser commander would have chased the fleeing enemy off the battlefield, taking a key unit out of the fight. Not Hasdrubal. Following Hannibal's precise orders, he performed the single most important maneuver of the battle. He wheeled his victorious cavalry around the entire rear of the Roman infantry line. This wasn't improvisation. It was the pre-planned, war-winning move. He then slammed into the rear of the Roman cavalry on the other wing, completing the encirclement of the cavalry and securing the entire rear of the Roman army. With the back door slammed shut by the cavalry, Hannibal gave the signal. The elite African infantry on the flanks, who had been patiently waiting, pivoted inward at a 90-degree angle. The trap was sprung. The perfect double envelopment was complete. The massive Roman army was now trapped in a deadly pocket, surrounded on all sides. The very soldiers at the front, who thought they were moments from victory, now realized they were at the heart of a slaughterhouse. They were packed in so tightly, shoulder to shoulder, that most couldn't even lift their arms to swing their swords. They were crushed not by Carthaginian steel, but by the sheer mass of their own men pressing from behind. The scene was one of unimaginable horror. The Roman army, the most powerful military machine on earth, had become a helpless, writhing mass of humanity. They couldn't fight, they couldn't maneuver, they couldn't flee. They could only die, suffocated and butchered where they stood. Hannibal's sacrificial center, which had so brilliantly drawn them in, now pressed forward, becoming the final wall of the cage. By the end of the day, the fields of Cannae were soaked with the blood of tens of thousands of Roman soldiers. It was a strategic failure of epic proportions for Rome and a victory for Hannibal that has echoed through the ages. But why did it happen? Cannae is the textbook example of how tactical brilliance can shatter overwhelming force. The destruction was predictable because it was rooted in the Roman military's own rigid, brute force doctrine. They were too confident, too predictable, and they underestimated their opponent. Hannibal didn't just defeat an army, he defeated a system of thought. The model of Cannae, using a flexible defense to absorb an attack and then striking a decisive blow on the exposed flanks, is still taught in military academies worldwide. It's the blueprint for how a smaller force can achieve local superiority and win a total victory. The lessons of Cannae, however, extend far beyond the battlefield. They are timeless principles of strategy that apply to business, sports, and even personal challenges. The core idea is simple. Use your apparent weaknesses to bait your opponent, fix their strength in place, and then use your mobility and creativity to attack their true vulnerability. This is the art of calculated asymmetry. In business, you might let a larger competitor dominate a saturated market while you pivot to capture a new, emerging niche they've ignored. You're not meeting their strength with strength, you're flowing around it. A key element of Hannibal's success was patience. He never rushed the trap. He allowed the Romans' own momentum to become his greatest weapon. He masterfully traded space for time, giving up ground in the center, ground that didn't ultimately matter, to gain the decisive advantage on the flanks, which mattered absolutely. This highlights the power of comprehensive planning. For Hannibal, the chaos of battle was a controlled, predictable system. Hasdrubal's cavalry wheeling behind the line wasn't a stroke of battlefield luck. It was the planned final phase of the operation, designed to ensure the total annihilation of the enemy. By creating this encirclement, Hannibal's forces achieved what strategists call local superiority at every critical point. Even though they were outnumbered overall, at the points of contact that mattered, on the flanks and in the rear, they had the advantage. This local superiority guaranteed the systematic collapse of the Roman line. This is a fundamental lesson for any leader. You don't have to be the strongest everywhere, as long as you are strongest where it counts the most. The psychological trap, the calculated retreat, and the asymmetric application of force are universal principles of strategy. The Battle of Cannae is more than just a historical event. It's a mirror that reflects the fatal flaws in any system that is too rigid, too confident, and too unwilling to adapt. It proves that even supreme power can be rendered completely impotent by superior planning and a deeper understanding of the psychology of your opponent. Hannibal's genius was in mastering the psychological geometry of the battlefield, turning his enemy's greatest strength into their fatal weakness. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into one of history's greatest tactical masterpieces. If you value this kind of definitive, evidence-based strategic analysis, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new exploration. We want to hear from you. What other battle or strategic event would you like to see us put under the microscope? Let us know in the comments below. Join us next time as we dissect the mechanics of another historical turning point.